to the May 27th, 2025 meeting of the Planning Board. First, we'll take a roll call to introduce board members and staff. Mike Derderian, one of our newly elected members. Oh yeah, just say hi.
You're
That way
supposed to
everyone
say
who's watching
here,
knows who
hi,
you
or
are.
something like that.
Yeah,
I was going to
Just
say, do I say
acknowledge.
present?
sure.
That works.
Maureen White.
Hello.
Hello. One of our other newly elected board members, Sean Weller.
Here.
Phil Giordano.
I'm here.
And I'm Ellen Rawlings. I am here. We are also joined by Elijah Romulus, our town planner, Jessica Cole, our recording secretary, and Jack Hatfield from Westwood Media Center. This meeting is recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live on local cable television Comcast Channel 6 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also live on the Westwood Media Center's YouTube channel. If you're interested in joining the meeting via Zoom, you can find the login directions in the planning board meeting notice that's posted to the calendar section of the town's webpage at https://www.townhall.westwood.ma.us/. We will begin the meeting with only the board members and staff unmuted and on video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we will unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they are not speaking in order to minimize background noise. For applications, the chair will first invite the applicants to address the board and give a presentation summarizing what is being requested. Board members receive the application materials prior to the meeting and will have reviewed them. Board members may ask questions during and following the presentation. Staff and outside experts will provide comments to the board. If the issue includes a public hearing, the board will then proceed to the public comment portion of the public hearing and will restate the instructions. In this remote meeting format, residents and guests may participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized to speak over the Zoom meeting application or from a telephone dial-up. We will be able to hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to the meeting. When we come to that part of the meeting, I will remind everyone of the process. Following the public comment portion, the board will deliberate and make a decision or continue the hearing to a specific future date. All remote meetings require that votes be taken by roll call. When a motion and second has been made, the chair will ask if there's any further discussion before proceeding to a roll call vote and will then restate the results of the vote. Okay. First, I'd like to welcome our new members. Nice to see you. Nice to have you here. Now I will ask Elijah, any changes to our agenda this evening?
No changes to the agenda.
Fabulous. All right. Then our first agenda item is annual reorganization, election of chair, vice chair, and secretary. And at this point of the meeting, I'm going to hand it over to Elijah to take nominations and we'll elect our new officers.
Okay. Elijah, I'm going to nominate Ellen to be the chair.
I second that motion.
And I third that motion.
And I fourth that motion.
Okay. We're going to learn
All
parliamentary
right.
procedure here.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I know.
So-
Aye.
all right, great. So we got a motion and we got a second. I guess I will go
Take a roll
through. Take a roll call vote. Phil,
call. I vote aye.
Sean,
I vote aye as well.
Maureen,
I vote aye as well.
Mike,
I as well.
and Ellen.
Sure. I'll vote aye as well. Thank you. Someone else has to do it next year.
All
Don't
right.
worry about next year when next year rolls around.
I know.
Actually,
Yeah.
I'm up for election, so you might be, could be a newbie. Mhm.
All
We'll
right,
see.
so the motion carries. Well, congratulations, Ellen, on your Madam Chair. And so at the next one that we will be taking on is the position of Vice Chair.
I would like to nominate Phil Giordano as vice chair for the position of vice chair of the planning board.
I'll second that.
All right.
Any,
so we
any
have-
objections, Phil?
No, I'll be vice chair because Ellen's always there.
All right, great. So there's a first, there's a second. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Sean,
I vote aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and Phil.
Sure, aye.
All right, the motion carries. Congratulations, Vice Chair
Thank
Phil
you.
Giordano. And the final position that we have for this evening is Secretary. And I will take a motion for Secretary.
Any eagerness? Because I'm gonna nominate a newbie, but if somebody wants it, I'll give it, or at least I'll nominate it. It hasn't taken a vote yet.
And Elijah, just so we don't scare anyone off.
Yeah, really.
what-
All right,
what-
I'm gonna
what-
go
what
Mike.
does-
Mike's
yeah.
a lawyer, so therefore, I'll go with the brethren of the bar.
And Maureen was shaking her head no the
it's
minute you
like-
said no.
I nominate
I
Michael.
know. I second.
All right, there's a first and a second. And to, I guess for discussion, just to Sean's point, the secretary, if ever needed, would take minutes. However, we have the fabulous Jessica Cole, who does our minutes on the meeting-to-meeting basis. So yeah, just wanted to get that out there. We can take a roll call vote. Maureen,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
and Mike.
Aye. Sounds good.
There we go.
I realized
We
I
are
realized
reorganized.
Mike didn't even accept the nomination before
Yeah.
we started voting. So,
I already texted my parents, so you know.
yeah, it's
Can't turn it down now.
Wait a minute, the fabulous Jessica Cole has got her hand up.
Indeed.
Can I speak, Chairman? I just had a
Yeah.
quick question. Maureen, do you want to be Ms. Collins White or just Ms. White? Just for the record, I just want to make sure I get it right.
I think I probably should go with how it's, my legal name is Collins White.
Great, thank you.
Our elections
why she
are
takes the
always a
minutes.
game of not it on this board. It's like nobody wants to do. But that's okay. Congratulations to the officers and to everybody who
Congratulations.
didn't get made in office. Okay.
good.
Well, I'll hand it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Okay. And thank you all. I mean it. Next year somebody else has to do it. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to next year.
Here we go.
For now, our next agenda item is agenda item number 2, 425 Providence Highway. Consideration of proposed modification to an environmental impact and design review, EIDR. Approval to permit the relocation of mechanical rooftop units without screening at 425 Providence Highway. That is the Mercedes-Benz dealership property. Mr. Johnson, are you here from the applicant team?
Here, Bryce Johnson, JMD, Group 1 architect for this job.
Welcome. Happy to turn the floor over to you to share with us what you would like to share.
Yeah, I'll pull up my screen real quick, show everybody what we're talking about. Let's see here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Alrighty, so quick rundown. The showroom used to look like this. It looks like this. It's more squared off. Our main highway is Highway 1, Providence Highway, I believe is the name of that. Of course, we have the McDonald's between us, the access road, Glacier on our north side, Everett on our south side. And just a backstory as to what had happened on this particular project and why I had to come back. It's all about the 2 RTUs on our upper eyebrow canopy. They were previously located down here on an existing concrete structure. Those were going to be 2 new holes in an existing structure to be found less than desirable to take additional loads. Those 2 units are very heavy, so our structural engineer visited the site. A lot of analysis was performed, and we decided it best to put it on our new steel package. The steel package could take the weight. And here I am making the presentation again. Just a rundown as to what that was previous. You know, conceptually speaking, it was an eyebrow couldn't see the units. And this is along Highway 1. Proposed speaking, it looks like you can see the screening, but I really don't think you can. We've done a couple of renderings of what that would look like. Let's see. Here's a proposed rendering from the south side of that, looking back at the building. I actually visited the site recently, and that looks pretty much like this. So I actually can't see the units from the ground, right? As you walk around the building, still not visible, and then there he comes at the very last minute, the very, very backside. I'm on the site, like there's a lot of trees over here. You can't even see the building from this side. From a different vantage point along the highway, let's see, I think it was these here. So these, I kind of walk the building. I'm going to the north side of the building, and then I back out to that middle, road between us and McDonald's. And then I back out again to Highway 1 going north. And the two units are right here. One right there and one right there. And I'm in a car, so this photograph really isn't good, but that's literally what I can see from the highway. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. I know from an elevation standpoint, it doesn't look great, but just like the rendering show, it's pretty much still not visible. So we're trying to see if we can do away with the screening. Obviously, there was a 2-month delay with all of this adjustment. There's been added cost. I'm trying to help my owner out by reducing any added attachment to louvers or whatever that may be as well. So that's what we're here for.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Yes. So I don't see any issue with the placement or the location of the rooftop units. However, I do think, I would suggest that the applicant do, in fact, screen the rooftop units. It's a standard that we have for mechanical facilities that are implemented on different projects throughout the town. And so just kind of staying in line with what the Westwood bylaws and general bylaws account for.
Thank you. All right, I'll open up to board member questions or comments. I see Phil has his hand up. Yes.
Sure. Is it just a cost issue, or tell us why, what Elijah's saying in terms of the standard screening, that we wouldn't go along with that? What's the differential, and tell us a reason why?
From my standpoint,
Yeah.
I personally don't think they're there. We're in a wind breed zone, so they have to be like 4-inch deep louvers, which is a high wind zone rated system, which is fine. We could do that, but it's just, I literally cost the owner 2 months of their time, 2 months of their money to make sure I did this building right, to make sure it's safe to the public. In doing so, I did move things that question your bylaw, which is why I wanted to present it. But from, an additional standpoint, I don't think they're visible, So I think the delta is, several $1,000s, like tens of thousands of dollars, and labor. But, if I can help my client out, that's my job. That's my duty. Right. And my, life safety for the public as well. So I'm trying to do two things: maintain life safety and meet you guys' expectations.
I hear you. So is the project, I go by there all the time, and it seems like it's taking a longer time than I would have anticipated. Is that part of the issue, that the project either came into some delays or there was some issues that slowed it down?
That's right. That's right. About 8 or 10 months ago, when we took off the original steel package that was there, we took that off. The concrete middle parts building that's in the middle of this thing, it's like 3 different structures, right? I don't know what error that was, but the concrete was found to be in a deflecting looking mode. It had some cracks. We hired a forensics engineer. We had to repair about 9 columns, I think, because the columns were also structurally questionable. So we addressed a whole slew of issues, but that took, a month of engineering, site investigations. I definitely halted the project, and I'm just trying to do, my due diligence and try and help out where I can, because red ink is red,
Yeah, no, I hear you. And the angles, can you show the Glacier Drive side again? If you could just, because you were popping really fast and I
Yeah,
was on the
sorry, I'm
board,
trying
we
to
were on the
remember.
board, some of us were on the board when this originally came, but
So
just-
like from this view here,
that's Glacier?
yes, this is on the north side of the building. So the service
Yep.
drive is here. You've got three
Yep.
service drive doors. You know, that parapet hides the RTUs there. And of course, our RTU's in the middle of this just massive eyebrow, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now could you go from Everett, the south side?
Yeah, give me 1 second here. So walking back.
So that's the side where it may be more visible.
Right, and it's on the back side of just a site plan reference real quick. Not to jump around, but I did want to show you. So I'm basically on this side of the building right here next to the transformer. So Everett kind of bends away. We've got trees right here.
So just slow down for 1 second. You took the photo from where the little eye, that where the cursor is right now.
yeah,
right
pretty
around there.
much right there. So if I
But-
go,
but
there's
the-
the transformer.
Yep, I see that now. But if you were at Everett Street on this side, fair to say that it would be more visible, is that correct?
Yeah, this is what it looks like from that curb cut.
From that curb cut, but the curb cut is closer to the building and the structure itself than what the vast majority are going to see.
That's
And
right.
so kind of cutting to the chase, it's going to be more visible from that side going from there. And in fact, I think also on the Glacier Drive side, you're also closer to the building than what would be the vast majority of people, which are going to be over at the Glacier Road. Okay. I'm good. I have no other questions.
Good.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Phil. Any other board members with questions, comments, thoughts? People look like they're contemplating. I saw a hand. Sean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill, perhaps directed at you and towards your comment, what you were getting at, correct me if I'm wrong, what you were getting at is that the rooftop unit would still likely be visible if you're kind of further back on Everett Street. Is that correct? And
That was the point of my question, because
Yeah.
from the
Okay.
the angle of the
Yeah.
photographs, the images were, I think, atypical merely because they're very close to the building.
And I suppose if you're further west on Everett Street, seems like looking at it from kind of the front
Yeah.
side of the building, it's a little more mass, but from the back side, you might see it a little bit more.
Yeah, so
Clear.
the photograph I took on this side of the building, I'm standing right here in this parking lot, just kind of
Yeah.
north of McDonald's, looking back at that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the best one. I don't have a better one where I kept walking there.
Then maybe a question for our staff. When evaluating something like this, when would you advise we make exceptions to our traditional standards?
I mean, I do think being able to see it from Everett Street is the part of the building that faces, the most traffic going in and out of Westwood. So I do think that screening would be appropriate for this site. The applicant came before us. There were, some minor site changes overall, including the relocation of the rooftop units, while the applicant is asking for, no screening. I do think it is necessary, while the minor changes I think are just that, minor changes to the site plan.
Right. And we did require similar screening for the rooftop unit on the fire station, which also I think had some masked visibility from certain vantage points and angles, but I felt that was important in that case as well. So thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Any other board member questions, comments?
Can I just ask how tall does it stick up from the roof? I don't have it right in front of me, but I drove by there today, and when I'm on Everett Street, the only thing I'm thinking about is how long is that light going to be at Everett Route 1? So,
Oh yeah, it's a hard turn there. Mentioned it on one side, I thought. I'm pretty sure it's 60 inches to answer your question.
60
Because we have a submittal ready to go. The GC's got the product ready to go. I believe we're ordering a 60-inch profile top, 1 foot off of that roof.
Almost like.
Any other board member questions? Sorry, when you say you have something ready to go, do you mean you have screening ready to order or the something else?
Yeah, because we knew
Okay.
this could go one of two ways. We've had the GC
Okay.
talk to, prepare everything in case we got to pull the trigger and go for it.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought that's what you meant. I just wanted to make sure I was not misinterpreting. Any other board
Yeah.
member questions or comment? Maureen, yes,
You're
you
muted,
may be
Maureen.
muted.
Am I still muted?
Nope, we got you.
Oh, okay. You said it was 60 inches, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and a foot up, so that means it's going to be like almost like 6 feet that it'll be up?
Yeah, 72 inches. Right.
Okay.
That's right.
And it's typical for something this high that can be visual from the street to be screened.
Yeah, these are the product that we're specifying is a direct attach. It basically hangs 3 feet off all the units so they can breathe. Comes with a profile. It faces directly up. It's a metal that'll match the building, and it's rated for 145 mile or whatever the project is here to take that load. So it allows mechanical access, breathing clearance of the units, and appropriate loadings for the wind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? I think my questions and thoughts have already either been asked or articulated one way or another. I don't feel a need to add to that. So thanks to my colleagues for hitting all the points that I would have. If there's no further discussion, I guess perhaps rather than just moving right to a motion, it makes sense, since there's an ask on the table, it makes sense to get a sense from the board what motion we need to make. Are people inclined to grant an exemption, or are they more inclined to require the screening? Start with Phil.
I lean towards it. I'm sensitive to cost concerns, but I lean towards maintaining the screening.
Okay. Sean?
I'd lean towards the screening as well, just as a matter of consistency with our bylaws and practices. But Bryce, I appreciate you making the ask.
Yeah, no, I
Thank you
agree.
guys. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Yes, I echo that as well. I'm sensitive to the cost, but as Sean pointed out, we just asked our taxpayers to pay for screening. So I'm also a big fan of consistency. But I will poll the other two board members as well, just to get a sense of which way which motion we're going to entertain. Maureen? You're muted again. Sorry.
I agree with what was just said. I'm sensitive to the cost. However, if that is what we've been doing, that is a bylaw, we should stay with that.
Thank you. And Mike?
yes, I feel the same way as well.
Okay, well, then I think that clarifies which motion we want to entertain. All right, so if Elijah we have a couple to do first. I think we have to make the
Do we need to
determination on
do
the.
any public comment on this? I can't remember.
It's not a public hearing, but if
Okay.
there's anyone who was here to speak on this, I'm happy to entertain any comments. If any members of the public were interested in sharing thoughts on this application, please raise your hand and we can enable you to speak or enter it in the Q&A. I'll give that just a second. I'm not seeing anything, so I'm comfortable entertaining a motion at this time.
All right, I move that the planning board determine the modification of the environmental impact design review, EIDR approval for 425 Providence Highway, as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on April 24th, 2025, to be minor in nature.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Maureen,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
and Mike.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion carries, and we can move on to the next motion.
Marina and Mike, you'll get used to these long ones.
You mean short ones?
You should see some. They're very long, but
should see
this
some.
isn't too bad.
Yeah,
Go
this
ahead, Sean,
one.
you're up.
All right. I move that the planning board grant the minor modification of the environmental impact design review, EIDR approval for 425 Providence Highway, as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on April 24th, 2025, subject to the following conditions. 1, except as modified by the conditions and findings hereof, the project shall comply with the project plans and with the conditions of all prior decisions for the property in all respects, and the applicant shall pursue completion of the project with reasonable diligence and continuity. 2, if the project or any condition imposed in this decision requires any other permit, license, or other approval from any town of Westwood board, commission, or agency, or other Commonwealth or federal regulatory agency, the applicant shall make an appropriate application for the same and shall obtain all required approvals prior to the start of any work. If any condition of such permit, license, or other approval from any other board, committee, or agency is inconsistent with this decision, the applicant shall make application to the planning board for an amendment of this decision, and the planning board shall consider such application in accordance with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and all applicable planning board rules and regulations. 3, any proposed alterations, modifications, deletions, or changes to the decision shall be requested in writing to the town planner and building commissioner prior to implementation. A, proposed alterations which are considered de minimis by the building commissioner may be accepted as a note to the file. B, proposed alterations which are considered minor by the building commissioner shall require the filing of a modification application of said approval for review by the planning board at a publicly posted planning board meeting. C, proposed alterations which are determined to be major by the building commissioner or by the planning board shall be considered by the planning board as a formal amendment to the approval and will require a new public hearing before the planning board. 4, applicant is to install rooftop units, RTU screening, and submit an updated plan set for review and approval of the town planner that indicates screening of the RTUs per town of Westwood zoning and general bylaws. 5, all project-related construction activities shall comply with the timeframe set forth in the town's general bylaws, Chapter 292, for noise and construction, which allow such work Monday through Saturday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and Sunday between the hours of 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. 6, the applicant shall submit a sign plan for review and approval by the town planner for any signage not included in this application and shall obtain sign permits from the building division prior to installation of any new sign on the property or any sign on the property. And 7, a copy of this decision and the project plan shall be kept on the project site at all times during construction.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Mike,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion carries. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with the rest of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And that was not a public hearing, so we have nothing to close. So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is 790 Gay Street, consideration of proposed modification to an environmental impact and design review, EIDR approval to permit the abandonment of a walking path at 790 Gay Street, which is the Pine Hill School. All right. And I see Mr. Fitzgerald. Hey, how are you?
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome. Welcome back. I know you've been before us before.
Yeah, thanks. I'm here to basically review one of the modifications that have been made to the plan since we brought it before the planning board several years ago. It's back in actually 2021, and I can share the screen here. Let's see. So this is the plan. So just give a little bit of a summary. We first submitted a permitting set in August of 2021. Then in October and December, we submitted updates. One was for after a peer review, and the second one was updates per the town review. Then we provided a final set of updated landscape plans on the 16th of December 2021. And a planning board decision was made in December of 2021. That was several months, 5 months before the project went out to bid. So there's another 5 months of development of the drawings in order to put it out to bid. And so I think what is in reference tonight is this trail here. So this is just a frame of reference. This is Gay Street here. In this light gray with a little hatch pattern around it was the existing Hanlon School. This is now a ball field. This is the northern entrance onto the Pine Hills school site. There's a scout house right over here. And let's see if I can zero in here. So this was the original dirt path from the existing Hanlon School. There was a paved area back here, and people would walk along and basically create a path that led up to the fire access trail here at the end of Laurel Lane. And so the intent behind putting in a dirt path here was allow some parking spaces here that would be used by the scout house, but also allow an opportunity if people chose to go up, to access the fire access trail from down here. We would basically replicate what was there previously. It's a nature trail, knowing that people would be out there to go on to the fire access trail. And what we found during the development of design, as we further developed the drawings and completed our code review, was that we couldn't achieve this nature trail and meet accessibility code and without having to provide the paved surface, which would defeat the purpose and the intent behind a nature trail. These are the posted conformed set. This set of drawings, which we submitted, includes all the changes that were made during addendum, which is during the bidding period, but also after completion of the project, which is a conformed, the meaning behind this conformed set means it has all the documentation that was completed after construction. And one of the changes that was made here, you can see this triangular with a 6 is addendum number 6 during the bidding period, was to take out this dirt path and convert that over to grass. And the intent was that if people wanted to get access to that fire access trail, that a path would be created by people walking along that. And again, the reasoning is that we would be required by regulation to make this an accessible path, and we wouldn't be able to achieve that with just a nature trail. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Before I open it up to board member questions, any staff comments?
No additional comments. Just I think the applicant did a decent job of doing the overview. And there were some additional, there were additional changes that were made, but to the site plan altogether. However, the building commissioner determined that they were minor in nature. Some things like maybe a gas fit out, gas line fit out, or rearranging of a basketball court, but nothing that was found to be major changes to the site plan.
Thank you. I do see 2 hands up. Just to let folks know, I will be taking public comment on this, as I know there's been some interest, but we'll go through board member comments first, and then I will take public comment. I just wanted to let people know that. I saw Mike's hand go up first, and then Phil.
Beat you, Phil. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. I did have a few questions, and my first sort of set of questions just has to do with the process you sort of touched upon at the beginning. So my understanding is the designs were drawn up to have this non-paved footpath, and that was presented in December, was it 2021? And then 5 months later, the project went out to bid. And at some point in between December 2021 and I assume was May 22 when the project went out to bid, it sounds like you guys realized that there was an issue with the non-paved footpath. And so I think from some of the stuff that was submitted at that point, you changed the drawing to get rid of the footpath before the project went out to bid. Is that accurate?
It was changed while it was out to bid.
Okay. And
so there's like a 4-week period of bidding. So we'll put it out to bid, and then sometimes bidders have questions, or if we find discrepancies or things that need to get resolved, we'll issue addendum during that bidding period, so that those changes that we make will get reflected in the bid price when they're submitted.
Okay. Do you think there's an impact on the bid from this modification?
I think that the contractors carried a lesser value than what was previously shown, because we removed that path that we had shown previously. Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess just from the procedural point, why wouldn't the issue make its way back to the planning board before changing the design during the bid process? And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if the board tonight hypothetically said, we really want to figure out how we can get that, that path, is that something that is not worked into the price that would have to be budgeted separately, and it'd have to go out to bid separately or be paid for, additionally? Does that make sense? Is this an extra cost if we don't agree with the modification?
Yes. And so, just to explain, I guess, a little bit about the bidding process. So, we put the project out to bid, and we are receiving bids from contractors. We have a set timeline that we need to hit in terms of the construction schedule. And so the decision was made that felt like this is a minor item that we would, there's other changes to the site that happen through the course of construction. And that, when the project was completed, if we needed to go back and, show any changes that were made, we would do that at that time. But this was considered a minor element to the overall project, and there really was no other option. Like I said, if the alternative is to construct a concrete or asphalt sidewalk that connects from here to the access trail, and the school district was not interested in having a concrete sidewalk be a nature trail.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that. My second sort of set of questions have to do with I guess the reason behind the reason behind changing the design before or during the bid process is a legal reason, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm just curious, did you guys receive like a legal opinion on that? Is this something that you bump up against commonly? So you see the issue so often? Yeah.
I mean, we as your professional architects and engineers have a legal obligation to provide a stamped engineered set of drawings that complies with the code.
Yeah.
And so we are obligated by that to meet that standard. And that was when we did our final code review, that was something that came up, and we needed to address it before the bids came in.
That makes sense. I'm curious, and I'm not familiar with this area of the law, but I'm curious, is the trail itself, is that accessible? Does that follow the regulations?
Are you talking about the fire access trail?
Yeah.
Since the fire access trail is not part of the school, and it's for fire access to into the wooded area, it's outside of the purview of the school district's project, and is not considered like I said, it's not part of the project. So the intention of that trail is for fire access.
That makes sense. So is it fair to say if you touch the land, that's what's going to trigger the legal obligation? But
Correct.
If you don't touch the land, like you're not touching the trails, it's not part of the project, the legal obligation doesn't get triggered.
Right. And the fire access trail, we did have to relocate the fire access trail as part of the project because the existing trail went straight through where the new school would be going. And so we basically had to replicate in kind, essentially, the fire access trail to be rerouted around the project. But yes, any sidewalk or surface that we are creating on the school site as part of the project is required to be accessible for everyone. So we wouldn't be able to create a path that is only accessible for some people and not accessible for others.
Yeah, I raise that because it seems odd that the path, the non-paved footpath leading to the trail, right, that accesses the trail, has to meet a certain standard and regulation, but the trail itself for which that path is designed doesn't, right? It doesn't seem, practical, frankly. But then that's not an issue with the design. It's an issue with maybe the regulation. But is there any sort of review of that? Because I know under the ADA, there's generally exceptions for undue hardship or for situations where the accessibility standard can't be met. It sounds like the standard is, well, then you can always pave it, right? Because paving it generally will have that standard be met. I think that's what you mentioned before in your presentation, correct?
You lost me there a little bit.
So I think you said the decision was made not to have it paved, which makes complete sense aesthetically. But if we pay, I know the gradient is pretty steep, right? So there's probably no way you could have a dirt footpath of any type there that could meet the accessibility standard. But if you paved the path, then it would meet the standard?
We would have to, we may need to provide some sort of a ramp in certain spots. It would have to be studied further, but
it's still steep. But I know the regulations do kind of have this gradient exception where, if a path of such can't come into accessibility, even with paving, right? There's an exception to that. So put that aside, is there also a procedure that you know, the applicant could go through to get an exception in this type of circumstance where, you know, this is leading to a place that's not accessible anyway, right? So there's really no I mean, you want to make it accessible if you can, but I know there are exceptions to kind of the MAAB regulations. Was that at all discussed or looked at?
I mean, I would urge you to talk to your Commission on Disabilities about all of this and whether and how they
Yeah.
feel about that.
Yeah.
Because we did meet with them throughout the project, and my sense would be if you had that discussion with them, they would offer their opinion on that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because just right now it's just grass, and it's not really apparent that there's an entrance of any sort there, right? And I guess the hope is that over time the grass will deteriorate, so people see that, okay, there is a path that leads to this trail. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
Yeah, if that's something that somebody else wants to undertake, that's not part of the school district, that and not us, that's certainly something that if they want to pursue,
Yeah, so
I don't really know what to tell you. I mean,
I might have misspoke. I think the intent though is that a natural path will be formed. I think you mentioned that a natural path will be formed just from people walking on it constantly. Was the intent?
If that's the path that people choose to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other board member questions, comments? Bill?
Thank you. My brother, Mr. Dadarian, took some of my questions, but I'm going to expand a little bit upon some of it. So the issue really is the grade and accessibility. Is it just because you say it's not possible without a non-paved footpath in some of your submissions? Beyond that, you mentioned ramps. Have you already looked to see what beyond just paving this would entail or would not entail? That was
We really didn't get into it in that much detail. We just preliminarily, you know, we did look at the grading. There are some steep spots along that stretch, but we without studying it in incredible detail, we didn't, you know, design any sort of a paved pathway there, so we didn't see how many ramps would be necessary or not. Ultimately, the biggest, like I said, the biggest thing that the school district was not interested in was to create a paved pathway, which would not be considered a nature trail, and that was not of interest to them.
And if it's paved, it has to have. So, in other words, the kind of, you know, the conundrum is if it's paved, it has to be accessible and compliant. If it is grass and a natural path ends up being created, it does not have to have accessibility issues. Is that fair to say?
If we're constructing a path,
right,
that is intended for people to walk on, then that path needs to be accessible for everyone.
But by leaving it natural grass,
if it's grass, then it's up to people's choice if they want to go on the grass or they don't. It's not an intentional path that we're creating.
And so the key of this is the accessibility and the cost that's attributable to it. Is that fair to say?
I don't know that the cost was necessarily a factor. I think it was mostly the intent behind the creation of the path.
Okay. You mentioned that there were changes made. What changes were made separate from the path down at the fire access or at that point? What was done down there?
At the fire access trail?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can show here. So if you can see these two lines here, this was the original, you can see dirt path. If you see that wording there. So that was the original fire access trail that went straight through where we were putting the proposed building, and then connected back. And so what we did is basically replicate that in kind, working with the fire department and looking at the curves and the design of the path and make it as accessible as possible for the fire department for their vehicles to come up and take the turns that they need to with their vehicles. We created this workaround or rerouting of the fire access trail around the project.
So you're anticipating some of mine. So that is currently accessible by the fire department. They've approved it.
The fire department has, yes. We
Okay.
walked it before the project. You know, we walked it with the Concom. We maybe some of the planning board members as well. There was a large contingent of us that walked the site and flagged where that fire access trail would go, and we basically, replicated in kind what was there.
Is the grade, just explain the grade there. Is it steep, not steep? What does that look like?
We modified some of the grading just to accommodate the grades needed for the fire truck.
The vehicles, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Phil. Any other questions or comments from board members? I have a couple, but I'll wait and see if any of my colleagues have anything they'd like to add. All right, well, I'll go ahead, and if someone else has something, they can interrupt me if they would like. I was just double checking some dates. I guess I'm struggling with a couple of things. So town meeting voted on the project in October of 2021, and then this change was made in May. And I guess what I'm struggling with is there's an expectation presented to the town that this would be part of the project. So that's hard for me. That we've seen this in other projects. When something goes away after the fact, it can cause some consternation amongst the residents. So my first question, and I have a few, but is there something we can do? Because I went over there today, and if there were not some pink flags showing me where this path was supposed to go, where I could walk to connect up to the trail in kind of an easy way, it wouldn't be obvious to me that that's where I was supposed to go. So I'm wondering if there is something we can do to direct people that way. Because what I'm hearing is Laura Lane is taking a hit in a lot of ways. I've heard anecdotally from residents of Laura Lane that they're finding dogs from people who aren't obeying the leash laws in their yards, which isn't great. And they're occasionally having kids who parents don't want to wait in the pickup line, meet them on Laura Lane. So they're having cut through traffic, both with cars and pedestrians because of that. And now, because people don't understand where they're supposed to go to pick up the fire access road, they're also parking on Laura Lane and heading up to the trail that way. So if there's something we can do to make it obvious and direct people to use the Scout House parking and then walk that way, I think that, in my opinion, would be the right thing to do, particularly given that the presentation that went to town meeting included a footpath of some kind from that area up to the trailhead. So I understand the challenges with compliance and whatnot. I'm sensitive to that, but I'd love to hear if there's some possible compromise solution that you could offer.
Yeah, so just a little bit of a backstory. Before the project even started, people were parking on Laura Lane and accessing the fire access trail. It's been a long-standing thing that people were doing, even though the trailhead sign was actually right here on the school property, and there was a very visible path here. People would not always do that. They would go down Laura Lane and do that, and access those trails that way. We also have, there's also an abundant amount of parking all along here with a much closer access to get to the fire access lane. So, someone could park here very easily and walk across here and get onto that fire access trail without having to go onto Laura Lane. And there's an opening, right? It's very visible if you walk over there. This is where the trailhead sign is located right now. And so I think it's really, I really don't know why parents would be picking up their kids on Laura Lane when there are two, very clear, clearly delineated paths for student pickup and drop off. The buses come around this loop and the parents come around this loop. And it's incredibly, much more easy to navigate than what was there when the existing Hanlon School was there and people were parking and dropping off students on Gay Street. So I think that there are some people that will just do what they want to do. And so regardless of, whether there's a visible trail here or not, that people are just going to get onto the trail wherever they want. And I don't know that, putting in necessarily a trail here will stop anybody from doing what they choose to do. I don't really have any other like good answers other than, like I said, there's plenty of parking here along these parking spaces. I'm assuming, people would be going there after school gets out. But if it's before school, there's certainly parking spaces here. It might be just educating, people to let them know that, I don't know. I don't have any, anything I can offer up. All I can tell you is that the decision was made not to put in a paved pathway here because that would defeat the intent of having a nature trail.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the paved path. I understand that that would make it compliant. Maybe some signage, or I just like to hear some suggestions on something that would at least make it clear that they would prefer people to do X, Y, and Z. I understand what you're saying. Some
But
people will always do
if we
what they
put a
wanna
sign here
do.
that said that this is a trail, then you have the issue of people with disabilities saying that, well, now you're telling able-bodied people to go here and disabled people,
Understood,
you know,
understood.
yeah.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's reasonable. Okay, I've asked my questions. I saw Sean's hand go up and then Phil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your comment on the signage was what was floating in my head too. And I recognize you can't say you shouldn't say this is a trail, but can you say this way to the fire access trail, or is that even too much of an issue? Like, is there a way to get creative with the signage that's like, or a sign that says parking for fire access trail or something like that to let people know, this is a place you can park and get to the fire access trail from here? Or will even that present some challenges?
Yeah, because the path between that parking and the start of that access trail is not necessarily accessible, that we can't really add a sign saying the fire access trail is over here, go this way. For the last 5 years that I've been working in the town of Westwood, it seems to me like quite a few people know about the fire access trail and this network of trails that are back here. And they're very familiar with the school and that there is a parking area here. So I don't know what else to tell you. Whenever I go to the school and I want to go to the fire access trail, I'll park over here in this parking lot and I'll just walk right over and hop on. this is where the trailhead is. The trailhead sign is right here at the trailhead.
Okay. Thanks. I think that's all I have for now. Just thinking this through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Phil, I saw your hand go up.
Yep. So it sounds like what you're trying to have us endorse is we can't put signage, we're dealing with accessibility. So we kind of want people to know of the access trail, but we can't tell them there's an access trail, and we can't give them so if you're new to the school or a newbie in the area or something like that, you kind of have to figure it out. And that's what you're asking us to endorse. Am I incorrect?
That's the way it always has been, for however many years that trail leading up to those trails has been.
And I guess I'm struggling with how, and I see the point, but how we are kind of wink, wink, not creating accessibility when there's supposed to be accessibility. I'm struggling with what, and again, echoing what the chair had said, if this had been done at the outset or before it was, approved, at a very early stage, I think that might be different than where we are sitting here today. Does that make sense?
I'm not following you about that.
It is a paving and an accessibility issue, which kind of dovetails into one another. And is it because of a lack of desire, or certainly not a lack of intent to comply with accessibility, because we can't do that, and we're not going to do that. So I'm struggling with how do we not say that there should be something put.
We as your architects who are required to comply with accessibility codes as part of the school project, if we are creating a path for people to walk on, we have an obligation to make sure that that path is accessible for everybody. I don't know how else to say it.
No, but you're also kind of saying, but if people walk there themselves and kind of by their feet tread on the grass, and
that's their choice, but if we have if we're designing, let's say, some nature trails that's associated with the school project, and the intention is for students to go out on those nature trails as part of the school curriculum, we would be designing a boardwalk. We would be designing some sort of structured path that is intent for being an accessible path. We would not be able to design anything else,
or even putting up a sign saying go this way.
Exactly.
I saw Elijah's got his hand up. Yes.
Go ahead, Elijah.
Hi. Yes. So I guess I just wanted to, clarify. So perhaps this may have been a faux pas from the beginning in trying to connect the trail to begin with, because the fire access trail is just that. It's just a fire access. So the intent of that path is only for the fire department to be able to access it in the event of emergency.
Correct.
It has been used as a trail secondarily, and to be able to join one path that is specifically intended as a trail to a second path that is intended as an emergency access lane creates this this issue that is trying to
Correct.
be resolved.
Yep.
Thank you. That's helpful. Sean.
But there is a trailhead sign there, though, right? And that, I imagine that's for more than just the fire access trail? Would that also be for the Shuttleworth trail system?
Since there was a trailhead sign before we started the project, which was over here, we were replicating that trailhead sign in kind. So since we were eliminating
Yeah.
that other trailhead, we were replacing it.
But all that's to say this, the potential access created by this path that was kind of scrapped from the project was not just for the fire access trail, but for the Shuttleworth trail system, or am I wrong about that?
What people choose to put onto that trailhead sign, I don't know, but
Okay.
this is, like Elijah said, this is specifically a fire access trail, and we consulted with the fire department specifically about how wide that needed to be, the curvature of the path. It was not intended to be a walking path. I mean, I know that people choose to use it that way, but it is a fire access trail.
And if I understand correctly, and you may not know the answer to this, but what I'm hearing implied is the dirt path that was there prior had kind of evolved organically. No one had actually created that deliberately because it was
Correct.
very much an obvious path. So, but that's probably over decades of people walking on it.
And it was up on a knob. So when you were down, when you were down in this parking area here, I don't know that you could actually see the existing trailhead sign. So, it was always one of these things that, people knew about.
Thank you. Any other board member questions or comments before I open it up to public comment? Is that a real hand, Mike?
Sorry, Ellen.
No, that's
Obviously, Elijah, I've heard from a number of residents, and I've never walked the trail, but I've been urged to use it because it's from a lot of people say it's such a big, it's a big attraction. It's a big benefit. They love hopping on there, and I don't know if that accesses further trails or if they're just walking the trail that you access at that point that we're talking about, but people get a lot of benefit from that. And so I'm just curious, is this not even is this an unintended consequence of just something that's happened, or is this a real trail that the town is supposed to be using?
Yeah, I guess, Madam Chair. So I would say that first and foremost, it's the emergency access, and then secondarily, it's used as a trail.
It is. Does that access anything, Elijah? Do you know? Does that access a bigger trail in Shuttleworth? Is that?
From my understanding is that you can access other trails from this area.
From that, yeah. And then Elijah, my second question was, are you aware of any process by which hypothetically the town could receive a variance for a non-paved footpath? Because I think everyone would agree that it would, having nothing there makes it far more difficult for everybody to traverse that terrain, as opposed to having at least like a non-paved footpath. So it seems like if it's physically and scientifically impossible to come into compliance with the MAAB standard because of the gradient, right? Having something there would be better than nothing. So that's sort of where I'm struggling. And I did poke around and see that there is sort of a process for a variance if the town wanted to, go down that road for these particular situations, right? Where it is physically impossible to do something because of the gradient, but having something would be better for everybody versus having absolutely nothing.
Well, when you say everybody, you mean aside from the disabled people?
Well, I would think that a non-paved footpath is generally easier to traverse, even for a disabled person who might be able to do that, right? You wouldn't cover the entire population, but now you're covering nobody, including that entire population, right? which is why they have these exceptions and variances in this situation.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, just to answer Mr. Durian, I think because it has to be ADA compliant for all is what what makes that hard to accomplish. And so, or at least from the applicant's perspective, I'm just mentioning what's been proposed. So I would just say that we have to, look at the scope of the project, which is the abandonment of this specific dirt path. While it does lead to the emergency access fire path, still that part is actually out of scope when you think of what the school itself was able to propose.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess the point I'm making is a similar point to the point Phil made, in that this is a trail. People are accessing it, right? And so it's sort of this fiction where we're saying, well, we're in compliance because we're not doing anything, right? But if we made it a little bit easier for certain people to access, then all of a sudden we're thrown out. It just, there's a disconnect there that's just, just interesting. So.
Thank you. Phil, and then I do see we have some public comments.
Yeah, I've already asked too many comments, but since certainly there is a secondary use, but I guess the question is, because I hear Elijah saying that it was abandoned, but I don't know that it was abandoned if it was part of what was approved. I guess the question I really say is, it is possible, your papers say it's not possible, but it is possible to create. It's going to be costly though. This boils down to a cost and benefit approach. Is that fair to say, Mr. Fitzgerald? And that in order to, since it needs to be accessible and compliant, and that would be more than just simply kind of letting it appear abandoned and people walking on grass. That is where we're coming down. Is that fair to say?
I'm not exactly following.
Well, it could be paved, is the point. There could be ramps of
It could be
whatever nature.
it could be paved. It could be
there could be signage,
ramps.
and there could be ramps, but all of that costs money.
Exactly.
And that is what we don't know, because that is something that we don't know the scope of how difficult this is, because you've kind of said that is something that hasn't been fully analyzed anyways. But we should consider it at this stage as compared to with further information of whether or not it should be approved with cost analysis or any of the other things. Is that fair to say?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that in a form of a question?
In other words, if this was a this is doable. It's just, it is a costly doable, and that is where
it's costly, but it also, again, sort of defeated the notion of a nature trail, and that was the idea behind people are coming here to hop onto a nature trail, and we're providing a sidewalk that the school would need to maintain throughout winter and all of that. And there is a cost. There's definitely a cost associated with regrading that and providing, a ramp and all of that in order to get up to that point. But yeah, there's a cost, and it defeated the intent of what the school district was looking to create there.
And you don't see this as having any impact on Laura Lane? It's kind of separate from Laura Lane or whatever's going on with that. The parents, all the things we already heard.
Just, if you're asking about my opinion, I think that's a habitual thing. If people have been accustomed to going on Laura Lane for years and they like to do that, then they may be tending to do that anyway.
To follow their prior pattern.
when we developed this project, the school district, school board, or I'm sorry, the school building committee felt like, oh, well, we're providing enough, parking here, and drop off loops and all of that, we should be eliminating, any parking that people are having on Laura Lane because, there's plenty of parking here on site. So I would be just conjecture about,
Okay.
why people make decisions on what they do.
I've asked a lot of questions. Thank you for your insights. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I do see Elijah's hand up before we go to public comment.
Yes, I guess I just wanted to, so I do get I do understand the feeling of this kind of like bait and switch where there was a dirt path and all of a sudden they're asking to remove it. I do think that ultimately the problem that was kind of that's come to light with the ADA accessibility, I think is a greater problem in general because if you do have a full path that goes from the parking lot to the fire access lane, as a person with disabilities, how do you react to something that you're able to access and then it ends at something that is no longer accessible, being the fire path? And so I think ultimately that speaks to a larger issue. If there should be some type of accessible path in town at some point. But I just think for this specific project, that disconnect does create a problem. And I guess just from the staff side, I would advise the board to consider the path not being established.
So Elijah, just taking that, is the fire access lane ADA compliant if it was not just merely a fire access?
I don't believe so. I think it,
It's
yeah.
not. So what you're saying is we would have an initial accessible and compliant, but then that would kind of stop.
Right.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to public comment, and of course, board members will have a chance for final questions and thoughts. I see two in the Q&A, both from Steve Olenoff, but I think Steve also has his hand up. So let's enable Steve to speak, and then there's another person with their hand up. Just a reminder, we need your full name and address for the record, and promote Steve to be able to speak.
Okay. Should be able to now.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Steve Olenoff, 52 Glandor Road. I'm also vice chair of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which, by the way, has been the last two meetings discussing problems with people coming and going from the school and the problems that exist there. So I just want to say that I disagree with most of what the applicant has said here. And I think a lot of the planning board members made some good points on this. But a little history first. This was a trail that ended in the parking lot of the old school. And right from the very beginning, we're concerned that this this trail would be cut off by this new school being built. And there's quite a bit of discussion, and the promise made was that the trail would continue to exist and also would exist during the whole construction period. And that's when they built what you've been calling the fire access trail. But that's not really a fire access trail. It is really a trail, and it is a trail to Lower Woods. two words I have not heard this whole discussion. Lower Woods, one of the biggest hiking areas in Westwood. This is a major entrance to Lower Woods that's been used forever for people to get in there. And so the original discussion and the promise made by the town was this entranceway, this trail to Lower Woods would be maintained, and that this, and after much discussion at the beginning, they said, okay, they had to relocate since the trail went right through the middle of where the school would be. They would relocate the trail. They were also calling it a fire access trail, but it's not a fire access lane. It is a trail which is also used as a fire access lane. And you shouldn't be calling it one thing and saying, oh yeah, it's also a trail. No, it's a trail that is also a fire access lane. And it doesn't look quite like a trail because they overdid it a little bit, made it naturally has to be wider than most trails, but they cut down too many trees, and that was a big discussion that went on. But this is a promise that was made by the town, that there would be a path and an entranceway leading all the way from Gay Street right up to the trail, something we didn't have before. And now, the last minute, this promise is being broken by the town, and that's just unacceptable. The whole idea is that this is just an extension of the trail. It is leading into the trail. It's not a nature trail in itself because that area is so narrow. It's a trail leading to the trail. It's an extension of the trail because everything has been moved. The parking lot that was there has been moved. And here's the opportunity to get that trail right all the way to Gay Street. And that was the whole point of this, the relocating the trail and also making it a fire access lane. That was an important part of the project, but fine, it's a trail that's also an access lane. And this was the connected to it. So what we're doing here is not a nature trail because there's no nature along this thing. This is merely so people can walk down there and get to Lower Woods and get to the trails in Lower Woods. Those are the nature trails. Now, I don't care this thing is paved or it's grass or cinder or stone dust or whatever. It needs to be a legitimate trail that's there. And the whole idea is so people can find their way to Lower Woods, so they're attracted to Lower Woods, so they can go there to see it, which they didn't have before. And it's unacceptable to say, well, everyone in the neighborhood knows. People need to know that there's a trail there and need to see that there's a trail there so that they can use it. And that's why this promise that was made to have this trail here, whether you call it a trail, it gets very frustrating because this is not the first time this has come up with ADA. I'm a big supporter of ADA, but some things just get a little bit crazy when you say, here's a trail, a path, or whatever you want to connect to another existing trail, which is not accessible, which is not ADA accessible and doesn't meet ADA requirements. And then to insist that it be made ADA accessible is crazy. And if that's a flaw in the ADA law that needs to be corrected, fine. Or if there are other ways around it, we need to get around it. But it doesn't make any sense to say this needs to be ADA accessible. This is supposed to be a path to Lower Woods, and it's supposed to connect to it and attract people to it. Those parking spaces there by the Scout House will be for those people that wanted to come and park during the day when school is in session, because people hike all times of the day and all days of the week, and they could use those spaces and not have to use the spaces which would be taken up by people at the school. And certainly if they want in off hours, if they wanted to park further up, they could. But I think we need to keep the promise that was made that this trail is just an extension, a connection to the Lower Woods Trail that already exists. Now, answer any questions you want.
Thank you, Steve. I think Peter Schuler's also been waiting to speak. If we can promote him to be able to speak. And just again, Peter, we need your full name and address.
Thank you. My name is Peter Schuler, and I live at 779 Gay Street. I'm an abutter to the Pine Hill School and daily user of the trails behind the new school. I'm speaking tonight because I feel something other than abandoning the proposed pathway is owed to the users of the trail system. One significant point that I want to make to the planning board that has not been revealed tonight is that near the end of the school construction project, contractors added dirt and fill, graded it using bobcats that changed the original topography, and then sprayed grass seed over a 130-foot section of what is shown on drawings as the footpath in order to smoothly transition from the lowest to highest elevation on that path. The section created by the contractors is located 115 feet from the end of the sidewalk that's located in front of the Scout House. My understanding from Mr. Fitzgerald's memorandum is that non-paved trail could not be built due to ADA and MAAB regulations, but already part of that trail has been created by the contractor. If that new pathway construction is in compliance already, why can't a small remaining section be completed? If that new construction that was done is not in compliance, what will be done to make it compliant? The logic that nothing can be done to make that pathway more comfortable for walkers because of ADA compliance issues is pretty weak, given that the contractor already went ahead with modifications to part of that pathway. And that's a really big point because Mr. Fitzgerald just told us that once they touch it and make changes to it, it must be in compliance. And that's what they've done on a section of that trail. The entire pathway from the Scout House to the end of Laura Lane is less than 600 feet. The only improvements that are really needed are on the initial 240 feet, starting at the sidewalk and across the grass area next to the Scout House and up the hill that has been created by the contractors during the construction. The reason the grass is lousy is it doesn't clearly show there's a path. It's all wet when you're trying to walk across it, and it's just unacceptable to call that a pathway. Is there not some way to add stabilized stone dust or something similar along that small section, like what was done to create the non-paved pathways at the adjacent baseball field? There already are examples of non-paved pathways that I'm assuming are ADA compliant because they're there. I urge the planning board to work with the architect and builder to find a reasonable compromise to this problem, rather than simply allowing abandonment of what was shown, voted, and paid for by the residents of Westwood. We were told from the very beginning that the intention of that footpath was to promote people to park down by the Scout House and have access to the trail system that leads all the way into Lower
Yes.
Wood. And anything to not fulfill that promise that was made, I agree, is unacceptable. Thank you. And by the way, I do have a lot of knowledge of that area. If there's any questions about the trails or the trail system or the process to meet with the school all before construction started and everything that was discussed, I can answer any of those questions, I think, pretty well myself. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Peter. I don't know if anyone has any answers to some of the questions that were raised in any of the public comment, either town staff or the architect that I saw. Oh no,
Ellen, I think part of the issue is, if they did touch the land in some way, like Peter described, it might not have kind of gone far enough to create a walkway. I think it's that when the definition of a walkway starts to get, starts to become met, that's when that's when the regulations kick in. So I think that's just the issue there in terms of, you know, what work was or wasn't done in that area, and as to whether it was already touched in that way.
Thank you. Okay.
The other
Any
issue that
other?
the other issue I'm struggling with is, which is what both Steve and Peter have said, it was the promise made, and then where we are today. And at this point, it's hardish with incomplete information of understanding the scope of what would be needed to essentially perform in accordance with the promise, on, you know, the understanding that this is what was represented, as compared to, I'm having a real hard time with the wink wink, if people want to walk here they can walk here kind of approach.
Thank you. Any other board members after that discussion with questions or comments? I see Sean. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the public comment as well. I think it's illustrative of some of the history of this, and I think it points to the larger challenge we have with kind of ensuring strong trail connectivity in this town. I think it's not always at the forefront of what we do with some of our projects, but I'm a user of trails. I know some of our other planning board members are users of trails, and I appreciate it being raised by residents who are users of trails. I'm wondering, it's kind of more an open air question posed to planning board members and perhaps to the applicant as well. Like, where can we do anything creatively here? Can we alter the landscaping plan for that area such that the area that might otherwise be a trail but is not, has something different sprinkled across it to create a little bit of a visual connective naturalness between there and where the fire access trail starts? And we wouldn't necessarily call it a trail, but it might be some kind of light stone gravel landscaping between, or even just kind of plain dirt landscaping between there and the left-hand side of this image. I don't know if that's an option at all. I don't know if that moves too much into the territory of, oh, we're creating a walkway, but is there some kind of a landscaping solution to this that would work? That would be my first question. That might be low touch. My second, oh yeah, I'll let you answer that first before I.
If if someone other than a professional architect or engineer wanted to create a path there on their own, that is not responsible for meeting and complying with accessibility codes, that's certainly their prerogative, right?
Okay.
And you know, there's, just to respond to one of the comments about the stone dust, you know, it's one thing to have a small area of a stone dust connector between a paved sidewalk and bleachers that's on a flat surface for a field that's used in the springtime. It's another thing to create a, you know, over 100-foot long accessible route that needs to be maintained winter and summer, because there are people that would walk on that trail in the winter time. And I think one of the things that people aren't really thinking about is the disabled community. And like I said, you know, we have an obligation to providing an accessible route. So if we were to design, let's say, a stone dust path and said, okay, this is an accessible route. We now, you know, we may need to create retaining walls, or we may need to do other things to stabilize the surface here. You go through that entire effort of creating that stone dust path, and what happens? It gets washed out. It needs to get maintained, you know, through winter and spring and summer. Is that something that, you know, there's a significant cost, and there's a liability issue, right? That if you have someone who is disabled that says, I want to use that path, and it's not, easily maintained, it's a long distance to maintain. So there's lots of, it's a complicated situation. I don't know how else to put it. It was never an intent to be deceptive. We always had the intent of, we had heard that there was a desire to do that, and we that's why we initially put it onto our drawings. But ultimately, when we put our professional stamp on a set of drawings and we are required to comply with accessibility guidelines and the disability community of Westwood, who we met with numerous times, we have an obligation to make sure that we are in compliance with the regulations and with the community, with the disabled community.
I actually have a question based on all of this, and I'm prefacing this with, I don't intend to sound accusatory. It's a genuine question, but given that these drawings, the plans in some form went to town meeting in October of 2021, and I believe our board gave our EIDR approval in December of 2021, and this edit wasn't made until several months later. I'm just trying to understand how none of this came up earlier in the process. And again, I do not mean to sound accusatory. I'm trying to ascertain if there's something in the process that maybe needs to be amended or changed so that we don't bump into this again.
That was my exact question. I appreciate
Yeah.
the chair, because I don't understand how it's overlooked.
I can appreciate the question. I think it's a good question. I will say this was an $80 million project with 20 different consultants working civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, acoustical, hazardous materials, geothermal, geotechnical. There's hundreds and hundreds of drawings and hundreds of sheets of specifications, with many thousands of hours of drawings that need to be coordinated and put together and issued out to bid. And so, this trail here is very low on the, and I don't mean to say it that way, but there are a lot of drawings that need to get coordinated, and it's just one of those things that there's a lot of other things that we're looking at in terms of putting this drawing set together, so it's just one of those things that it just wasn't wasn't discovered until we had put it out to bid.
I'm just a little surprised, given that, as you pointed out, ADA compliance is not just state, but some parts of that are federal law. And there's other areas within the design that involve walking paths or areas. So I'm just wondering, and again, I don't mean to sound accusatory, I just don't want this, if there's something our board or our process, maybe involving the Disability Commission earlier, this seems like, I understand from perspective of the overall project, it's a small drop in the bucket, but from the planning board side of things, from my perspective, it's kind of glaring. So I'm trying to ascertain, like, maybe we as a board need to add this to our list of questions moving forward. I'm not sure, but I understand your point. ADA compliance is not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the law. So I kind of feel like we're in a bit of an untenable position right now, which I would like to avoid in the future. That's why I'm asking. Again,
Yep.
It's not to be accusatory, but I like to solve problems, and this seems like a problem. So it's okay. Did any other board members have questions? It looks like a couple more public comments have come up. If I don't know, Elijah, if you want to read those.
I have a quick question, Ellen.
Oh,
Maybe
sure.
Elijah or Steve. It's been mentioned, the disability community in Westwood, how would they feel about, moving forward, et cetera, if something was done or not done. Was there a discussion with that community or anyone from that community about this particular issue? And I'm just asking because, again, the trails themselves are not accessible, and I wish they were, and that's a separate conversation. The trails should be accessible, but that trail, the fire access trail and the connecting trails are not accessible. And so I'm just curious if, there would have been pushback or if there was a discussion about that with that community.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, I am not privy to that. I would have to defer to perhaps the applicant might know, as he has referenced it in the beginning of this conversation.
My understanding is that the fire access trail is from the very beginning was a requirement from the fire department because they need to access from the end of Laura Lane. There's a gate that we added for them in order to get to, I don't know, I think maybe the base of the Lowell Woods trails. And, so if there was ever a brush fire, let's say, that they need to get their vehicles, to as close as they can to that area before moving up. And so that's always been our understanding of that, and it's always been called the fire access trail. And there was never any discussion about making that fire access trail an accessible path for anyone.
Phil.
The problem is the accessibility issue becomes a broken promise to others also. And that's a little bit of the struggle that I have, that what seems to be an extremely late stage of raising this issue. And then it's kind of plopped in our lap, and we are obviously struggling with and I listened and I credit Steve Olenoff and Mr. Schuler, that this was something that was a specific promise, ask, whatever, and now it comes up at a very late stage, and it's just it puts the planning board in a very untenable position. I'm just trying to struggle with why and how we got here, and then what's a reasonable solution, because we then have accessibility and then it stops when it hits the fire access, and that has a lack of logic, but it also has consistency. I'm just very, very unhappy over how this issue has arisen.
Yeah, I mean, I do, and again, I am not completely conversant in the legal regulations here, but I do think that there potentially could be some type of procedure to receive a variance if that's what the town wanted to do. We could reach out to people in the community who might support that or might not support that, but in a situation where there's a gradient issue, I would support a paved pathway and a ramp if those trails were accessible, right? But given the trails are not accessible, again, I have struggled with the logic issue of just basically not doing anything and making it harder to walk up that path. But I also just lastly want to thank the architect, because it's, like Ellen said, this was a drop in the bucket, but there's a million other details that were done perfectly well here, and the building's beautiful. But we just happen to be focused on this one detail here. So I just wanted to make that clear. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a couple more public comments, but before we go back to that, I had one quick question. And this is probably for the architect on behalf of the applicant. Is this something that you absolutely need the board to take action on tonight?
This is not something that we need to have action on tonight, no.
Okay. I'm formulating some thoughts, so thank you. That's helpful. It does look like we have some more public comment, which I will take, given that this topic seems to be one of great interest. So, Elijah, is it better if I read them or if you read them?
I get, could we potentially just unmute the
Oh, right,
Yeah,
sure,
Mr.
because
Schuler is already in.
he's still here. Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
okay.
Sure. Yeah, Mr. Schuler, if you, I'm happy to let you address the comments you added.
Yeah, my first comment was, I think it's a little disingenuous for the applicant or Mr. Fitzgerald to chastise us for not considering the disabled community when their plan is to not do anything at all either. So I just I don't think that's a very fair comment for him to make. That was my first comment. And the second thing is, why did we get this far? I believe that until I began asking some questions to certain people, including the project manager last year, why that trail hadn't been completed, nothing was done and nothing would have been done. So I don't have any other basis than nothing was ever done until I began raising questions about this last year. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think given I've heard a lot of questions and it sounds like board members are struggling with this a little bit. I think it would be worthwhile for the board members to have a short conversation before we start with motions. If this is something we're ready to take action on, or do we have any suggestions or anything you'd like to see just before we start diving into motions? So any board members have any thoughts on what would be the preferred way to proceed, given everything we've heard and said this evening? Oh, everybody's got hands up. I'm not sure whether Sean or Maureen's hand
I
went
saw
up first.
Maureen first. I was waffling.
Okay.
Am I on mute?
You're
Yeah, we
good.
can hear you.
Okay. I don't think it was, or my feeling is, I don't think it was the intent for whoever designed it not to go forward with something. And I understand where everybody's coming from, but seeing as how the path was moved from its initial position, did that create a bigger problem for them to have to make it ADA compliant, which I'm thinking it probably did. So I guess I think it maybe still probably needs a little looking at to kind of get a better feel for what maybe could be done there. And I don't know. I would have to probably take a better look than what I did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sean.
I think to echo Maureen in the vein of this needing more of a look and to maybe get at some of the, Ellen, you were dancing around the timing issue. Does this need to be solved tonight or not? I want to just throw out an idea for two possible paths we could take here. Neither of these paths could be followed, but two possible paths. Number one would be punt this 1 or 2 meetings down the line and request the applicant, take a look at some, get creative, look at options and let us know what might be possible here and come back to us, given the feedback they've heard tonight. So that's maybe path number one. Path number two, is there any way we can move this to a meeting at the end of the summer? And if it just so happens that individuals have taken on of their own prerogative, the creation of some kind of a clearing in the grass in the subsequent time, that might be interesting knowledge to have at the respective time of that meeting. But it would, certainly allow a break in time before reevaluating this project. Two ideas I wanted to throw out there, not wedded to either. It's just for discussion amongst the members, but it was my thought when you made the timing comment, it kind of spurred those ideas.
Thank you. I kind of poked at that because I was curious if there wasn't any urgency, if maybe it gave everybody time to think about options. Mike, I saw your hand go up.
I agree. I think a little more time on this would be good. I think it would be great to talk more with our town council about the issues, to talk to people, who are in the disabled community who, I don't know if there's anyone who would, who would go against doing this path. I'm just curious if there's a group who would go against it, and we should hear that side of the argument too. So I think more thought and discussion is definitely needed.
Thank you. Phil.
I'm going to echo, I would like a couple of specific asks from the applicant, however, which would be to detail a little bit better what are the options and the process. While we may not be able to create a compliant fire access road, or path, I should say, it seemingly for me that we're trying to make a decision in a little bit of a vacuum without sufficient information to know whether it is, the best option in just the set of circumstances. I would be more interested in doing this, or at least an update at the next meeting, or not, kind of get some sense as to where we are in pretty short term. Next meeting certainly no longer than the 2 meetings away, and try to get a real detail understanding. Are we choosing door number 1, door number 2, or 3? And if we are, it is because of the following reasons that, and also getting some feedback from the disabled community. That would be my sense.
So I think I heard a theme emerge there, that it sounds like board members are interested in, since it doesn't sound like there's a pressing need to take action tonight, continuing this item to a future date with the hope that maybe there's some potential solution with input from members of the community who would be affected by a lack of ADA access, and talking to town council and other folks who might be able to help us find out if we could get some sort of a variance or exemption if the community is amenable to that. I think we're all cognizant of cost, but I am very sensitive to I don't really just want to do nothing if there's the potential for something. And I'm not ready to say there's absolutely no way to do anything just yet. And it sounds like we're all mostly on the same page.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
there's a question from Mr. Schuler that actually I would be interested in the answer to, that perhaps the applicant could answer.
Oh, yes, thank you. All right, I can read that since I have it in front of me. Peter Schuler, I want to make sure again that the board realizes the contractor has already created 130 feet of new pathway. Why doesn't that have to be ADA compliant?
I'm not sure what is being referred to as 180 feet of new pathway. That whole area there was regraded to by the landscape architect, so that it was more of a level, slow gradation down to to connect the different grade levels. So there's no accessible path there that I'm aware of that was created. So I'm not really understanding, I guess, what is being described. But all I could tell you is that, just like every other part of the site that was touched, we regraded everything so that all the grades would kind of flow together and blend into the landscaping. So there's no accessible path there. There's no section of that was done. If we were to try to make an accessible route there, that whole grading would have to change. I don't know. I guess I'm not really understanding the question.
I see Elijah's hand up, and then it looked like Mr. Schuler offered to be more specific. But Elijah, you first.
Yeah, I would just say based on the board's discussion, if the board would consider a continuance to June 24th, which is 2 meetings from now, just about a month. And in the event that we're unable to get comment from the Commission on Disability by then, perhaps we would continue it further, but at the very least to June 24th to allow for the applicant to consider alternatives.
That's reasonable. Thank you. Unless there's an objection from the applicant.
I guess I'm not really sure what options people are looking for us to create. I mean, like I said, either have a paved path, or I suppose, like I said, you could put a stone dust path, but there are many problems with that for such a big distance. We would need to look at the grading, and I guess the first thing, the first question I would have is what is it, like someone mentioned and we talked about earlier, is what about the Commission on Disabilities? How would they feel about a variance for this, and applying for a variance? This would all be additional cost. This is outside of the project scope. I guess I would ask this question to the town: is this something the town would want to take on? If there is a desire to expand the trail network and it's an additional cost that would, that the town would have to incur anyway, because this is outside of the scope of the project. Is that something that the town would want to pursue independently?
Mr. Fitzgerald, how is it outside the scope of the project if the project was voted upon and it was within the scope? So I think you're asking us to make a decision in a vacuum, and I don't know the entire cost, and certainly I'm not going to speak on that. But you're saying it's outside the scope and we're going to charge more, but I question that. I'm not town council, and certainly I'm just giving my sense as a member of the planning board.
So we initially had drawn the intention of a dirt path there, and eliminated it before the bids came in. And I'm not sure if you remember, but the bids actually came in higher than, because we were in the middle of COVID, and Russians had invaded Ukraine, and all of the costs, came in high as a result of all of that. But that path was removed from the project during bidding, so it was not something that is accounted for in terms of the cost of the project.
Could I ask a question kind of related to that? You mentioned that you changed the grading with the elimination of the path. Were those costs accounted for in the bid that was that you ended up accepting?
Say that again.
So
The already
the original
created-
design.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Cheryl.
you've created. You mentioned that what Mr. Schuler referred to, that stuff has been regraded. The area where the path was supposed to be, you had to change the grading. You changed to more of a gentle slope. Those costs would not have been part of the original. Those
Yes,
must
they
have
were.
been factored in. They're part of the bid.
Yes, because the I can share again here. So when this went out to bid, we had this detail and this path indicated, and then in addendum, so during the bidding period, we eliminated that. So when the pricing came in from the contractor, they did not include the cost of that in their bid because it was an addendum change during the bidding period. So when they put in their bid, they did not account for this dirt path. They simply looked at the drawings as we had shown without the trail there, and it turned over to grass. And that was the number that they included in their bid.
And the addendum was approved when? By whom?
So the project went out to bid in May of
But I'm talking
2021.
about on the town side. You said there was an addendum that removed it, but on the town side, because it was post-town meeting, who I assume someone approved the addendum.
The addendum was issued during bidding period, which was between May and June of 2022.
Right. But
Right.
that was an addendum added by Doran Whittier.
Yes,
Okay.
to the bid package that went out to contractors, correct.
Okay. Like, we could go down a longer path, and I don't know, we've already delved very heavily into this. And it's also, you said you've touched upon, and it was within the scope, a gentle gradation change, but not one that is sufficient. I think I think you certainly should have some understanding as to the sequence of questions. I'd like to know what number one, I'll just speak for myself. I'd like to know what the disabled community is interested in being done, and hopefully they could provide that information relatively soon before the June 24th meeting. I'd like to understand what is the cost and some understanding as to how or why the addendum was put in at the time that took this out.
Well, the addenda was put in because, as I mentioned before, that we have an obligation to comply with code and regulations, and so that decision was made to take that out instead of adding a paved pathway that would have added significant cost at a time when we had about $2 million worth of value engineering that we just finished in order to bring the project cost down. So at the time, if you think about at the time when we were putting this project out to bid, we went through a value engineering process to take $2 million worth out of the project, and then we had another $2 million worth of alternates that we took out of the project in order to hopefully come in under bid. Luckily, through the course of the project, because we had so few change orders and ARPA funding and the school put in extra funding, they were able to take all of the alternates back and buy all of them back into the project.
But not the addendum.
But at this, well,
not the path.
no, because that was non-compliant with codes and regulations, right? So that was the reason why that was removed to begin with, because like I said, it was not the intent to create a paved sidewalk or a hiking trail, and there was no desire to create a paved path to add more burden for maintenance and all of that, and the costs associated with that sidewalk. I would estimate, just based off of what other sidewalks cost on the project, that if you were to put it in a concrete sidewalk for this length, I mean, you're talking about easily six figures.
And your position is that's not within the scope?
No, because this was intended to be a nature trail.
I have, I think, a similar question, and my question is, why or what prompted you to apply for this modification now, as opposed to 6 months ago, as opposed to 6 months from now? Was there something that prompted this application, this request today?
I mean, we, at the completion of a project, we have an obligation to submit final drawings. I know that there were questions from the public that had asked about this trail, and we were requested by the planning board to come and present. I mean, we had initially submitted it as a minor amendment because in the bigger scheme of things, it's
Yeah,
quite
my,
minor.
sorry, my question maybe for Elijah too is there a modification that's being requested here? Because it sounds like the
Yes.
plans submitted for bid did not include anything.
So yeah, based on the as-built plans and the fact that the discussion on the trail initially was had a lot of public buy-in. We felt on the staff side that this could not go through as a just like an administrative modification, that it had to come before the board as a minor modification to allow for that public discourse.
So this is a modification to what was voted upon by the board December 2021.
That's right.
I just wanted to.
And
make
the
sure.
application is that it be minor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elijah, can you give us a sense as to how promptly we could get the Disability Commission or try to get some weigh-in from that community?
So, one thing on the actual planning board meeting, there's two meetings. There's June 17th, and I actually misspoke. The next one is July 8th. But I do think if we go to the July 8th meeting, it would give time because I believe the commission meets once monthly, or if prompted, we'd be able to meet within the month of June, I believe. So that would give time for comment.
Would it be possible to get a partial, or some feedback on the 17th, so we're prepared for the 8th as compared to, I hate to have the kind of the same set of questions on the 8th that we still might have been able to, in the interim in June, at least get some, further feedback to get a better understanding as to what are our options and what, direction to take.
Yeah, I can definitely look into that. So if the board decides to continue to June 17th, I can get
At least a partial.
get movement on that.
That would I think that would be helpful.
And I do think it would be helpful from the architect because from what I was hearing at the very beginning of the discussion, that even paving the pathway may not meet the accessibility standards. So I would like to get a sense of whether paving the pathway would meet the ADA standards, and if not, what's that extra step? Is it building ramps? Is it doing that sort of things? Because I would like to know what the options are, even if from a cost perspective, they might be more difficult to go with. But I would like to see generally what those costs were, what would meet the standard itself. Because again, I do think when even paving because of a gradient cannot meet the standard, there can be some flexibility depending on the situation. So, and I would like an opinion from council on that too, town council.
I would echo Mr. Dudarian on that. I agree.
So you're suggesting that you are interested in having a concrete sidewalk?
I guess I'm interested in just having an idea without, a specific dollar number. Just, I know you just threw out the 6 figures number, but maybe just having a little bit more of an idea of what that would entail. Just so it's an option on the table that can be looked at and discussed, right?
Would that ultimately be the school department's decision as to whether or not to pursue a concrete path?
It would ultimately be the school department based on what the scope was.
Is the school department supporting the applicant on this, Elijah?
No, where's their stand?
I would have to I'd have to confirm with the school committee. I believe so. They're aware of this going forward before the board.
Okay. I guess that would be also important for us to know that if they are also taking the position that this should be minor with no path created, I guess we should know that. Okay.
And one more question, sorry. And what is the effect if the board decided not to approve the modification? What practically does that mean? Like if someone can answer that right now, that would be helpful.
Then the as-built plans are not correct.
Yeah, they would have to ultimately, they'd be bound to the original
Vote,
vote from 2021, I believe.
right.
And so practically, what would that, what
They have-
what effect would that have?
They'd have to comply with the original vote because their as-built plans deviate at this point.
That's right.
Roberto, did you put your hand up because you, yes,
Yeah, if you are saying that the school department would have to put in a dirt path because that was what was presented to the planning board, they would not be able to and comply with the code.
The dirt path would not comply with the ADA requirements.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
John,
I think this has been a good conversation. I think we are kind of spinning over the same issues here. It strikes me as probably number one most important for us to engage with the Commission on Disability and understand some of the history around that. And I know there's a comment in our Q&A to that effect as well. That I'm not sure, maybe we want to discuss that here. So that strikes me as the most important thing, because if we were to not accept this minor modification and some kind of a dirt path had to get in there, I'm guessing that we would need the buy-in or support of the Commission on Disability in some way or other, or we would need to otherwise seek some sort of variance from the Architectural Access Board, as Michael mentioned. So that strikes me as most important. The secondary piece, I think, is an understanding of what it would require to get to a paved path. Like if this planning board here decides that the trail connectivity and the pedestrian connectivity is the most important thing here, I do not personally see the school committee is likely to go for that option at all, given the cost and the added expense. I'm assuming it's not really a feasible route, but is there some high level sketch that can just say, yeah, it would or would not need extra ramps. Yeah, would or would not need much more regrading. Yeah, we think this is six figures, but it's 100K versus 500K. I have no idea. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that. I don't want to send Roberto, I don't want to send you off on a wild goose chase for something that, frankly, I don't think is going to happen at the end of the day. I don't think the school committee will have the resources to support that, and they won't want to put that forward. But it's just helpful for us to have the very, very high level sense, architect sense, kind of magic sense of what that would take. I think those are the two most important pieces of information for us to know between now and either the 17th or the 8th. The first part, maybe the engagement with the Commission on Disability could come by the 17th, and then July 8th, we could come back here for a brief conversation on the issue and try to figure out next steps. But that would be my proposal.
yeah, I think that was all very well articulated. I think that's why I was inclined to not rush to make a decision tonight, because I don't want to jam up anybody, but I also am not ready to just say, sure, let's abandon this effort altogether. So I think that's what I'm hearing from my colleagues as well. So if folks are inclined to continue this discussion to a future meeting, I think that's what I'm hearing is the probably the best course of action. And I agree. I'm grateful for the discussion, but I think we're starting to circle back around again. So I think it's prudent to make a motion and move on to the next agenda item.
All right, I move that the planning board continue the public meeting for consideration of modifying EIDR approval for the Pine Hill School at 790 Gay Street as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on May 1st, 2025 to Tuesday, June 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. via Zoom, where a Zoom link and associated call-in numbers will be provided on the town's calendar on the homepage at westwoodma.gov.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll calls. Sean,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion carries. And for folks in attendance, if you'd like to submit comments ahead of that last meeting, you can email things to Elijah. Elijah, what is, I can never remember the whole town of Westwood email address.
Yes, so it is eromulus@westwoodma.gov.
I'd be
Awesome. Oh,
interested in seeing those comments.
yeah, and anything that's sent to Elijah will be disseminated to the rest of the board members, but for procedural reasons, it's best to send them directly to Elijah. Thank you. He put it in the chat. Oh, and they've shortened the email tag. Mine's still very long. The old school version. Roberto, thank you for working with us through this conversation. I hope you
appreciate
understand
all
where
the
we're
input.
coming from. Yes, we do appreciate the input. We appreciate you hanging tough through a challenging conversation, but I think we're all, just wanting to come up with the best possible solution for all stakeholders. So appreciate your time. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. With that, our next agenda item is, as it loads, 101 High Street. Consideration of proposed modification to a shared driveway special permit to permit changes to stormwater management and drainage systems at 101 High Street. If we have, I saw some folks from the applicant's team. We'll give them a minute to come on in.
Evening.
Good evening.
We have,
Welcome back.
Hello.
oh, is Giorgio?
Hello,
Yep.
Giorgio's here. Hello, Mr. Zaka.
I have,
Giorgio, and Angela is also here
Hey.
from Bowler.
great.
I know you like hanging out with all of us after 9 p.m.
I got a lot of work done in the office.
Oh, good. Well, I'm happy to hand the floor over to you to share the details about your application this evening.
Sure. So just to, again, for the record, I'm Peter Zacher, I'm attorney representing Supreme Development, Inc., relative to the property at 101 High Street in Westwood. The board may recall that we applied for and obtained a special permit for a shared driveway for this property. After obtaining that, we had a Form A, or approval not required plan, endorsed, which divided the subject property into 5 building lots. Part of our application and discussion with the planning board on the shared driveway special permit involved I'll use the word generally speaking, environmental concerns, stormwater management, wetlands, etc. Subsequently, that we received another approval from the Conservation Commission relative to that, and then subsequent to that, we got more refined and started putting in the house locations and the driveways for the individual houses and lots, which resulted in some minor modifications to the stormwater management system. So essentially our initial application and approval had plans that showed the stormwater management system for the shared driveway, which has been revised, and we're now before you to show you those modifications and hopefully have those approved. Having said that, the easiest way to do this, if I could turn this over to Angela Botto from Bowler, she can walk you through what I believe are the minor modifications that were made to those plans.
Sure, thanks, Peter. Good evening, everyone. For the record, I'm Angela Botto, and I'm an assistant project manager at Bowler, and we were the site civil who worked on this project. So since we have last been in front of you, as Peter stated, we have submitted 5 individual applications to the Conservation Commission for each one of the lots. we have 1 notice of intent and then 4 land disturbance permits that were submitted. So when we first designed our stormwater system for the shared driveway, we did upsize that in order to accommodate the potential future driveways. And as we worked through a peer review with VHB, we did refine a few things from the plan that you have seen, and I will pull those up. Can everyone see my screen?
Mhm.
Just a refresher for the site, for those who have not seen it, we have High Street to the south here, and then Grove Street to plan right. There is an existing house currently on the site. I will switch over to our proposed work. So right here, what we're looking at, I've outlined in teal what the limit of work was for our previous shared driveway submission. And then outlined here is what was submitted for the 5 individual lot permits with the Conservation Commission. So through that peer review, we do have the same basin here that we saw with that last submission back in January. I've outlined in orange, there is a sediment forebay here that we've added to enhance some of that water quality. Then looking down Plan South in purple, this infiltration trench has grown a bit as we further refine this grading. It was easier to send some of that water down into this infiltration trench instead of back up into the system up here. And then outlined in the blue are the new catch basins that we have added. Those were part of the scope with each of the individual driveways, but they're all tying back into that same system. So generally the same plan that has been before you before, but with a few modifications based on that peer review, and as we just further designed and outlined with the new house locations and grading. And with that, I can open it up to any questions.
Thank you. I didn't want to start talking if you weren't done. So thank you. Before I mention to staff, I just want to say I always get very excited when I see additional features for stormwater drainage rather than, oh, we're taking things away. So I appreciated looking through these plans. Any comments from staff?
Yes. So I would just say, in addition to what the applicant presented, I think that the minor modification seems just in making sure that they meet the new stormwater conditions. There was one comment on the peer review that was done on the conservation side as it related to performing additional test pits. So if the board considers this for approval, I would just ask that that the condition for additional test pits be applied to any potential condition of approval.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right, I'll open it up to board member questions and comments at this time.
I'll just echo the chair, having walked the site, and when I see additional stormwater, it's also exciting. So I was pleased by what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Any other, or Sean? Yes.
I would just, again, echo the others and say, you've done a really nice job engaging with all the boards here, particularly on the stormwater front, some of the environmental concerns, some of which are out of our scope, but appreciate your engagement with the Conservation Commission there as well. I'm amenable to including the condition that was recommended by our peer reviewers, unless that would pose any serious concerns to the applicant, but I think that makes sense to me, and I certainly respect their expert opinion on this front.
Thank you.
If I may on that point.
Yes.
More
Yes.
Angela's thing, but those were coming through the peer review as part of the Concom, and I believe that we are appearing before the Concom tomorrow evening.
Yes.
Angela? Tomorrow evening, so I just want to make sure we don't get, we'll, you know, so I don't know how you can do this, but we'll do what the Concom requires. I just want to make sure it's worded in such a way that we don't end up having to do test pits because of this decision that we're not being required by the Concom.
Elijah, are we able to word the condition in such a way that it kind of defers to the Concom, like whatever the Concom requires, or would that be appropriate here?
Yes, I could condition it in such a way.
Okay, just to make
Yeah.
sure we're all aligned.
Agreed on that.
So that it
Yeah,
doesn't come back to us.
Right.
Okay.
And we're not requiring extra test pits in addition
And
to whatever.
They've
We don't
already-
want to create a problem that doesn't need to be there. That's a good point, Mr. Zaka. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? Yeah, I also, as someone who walked that site and understands how challenging it is and how important managing runoff and melt and water in general on that site is, you guys have consistently, as Sean said, done a very nice job managing, you know, all of that, setting expectations and designing really well. And I was very happy to see the updates. So yes, thank you for that. If there's no other board member discussion, I'll give it a minute for public comment. If there's any members of the public who would like to comment on this application, please either raise your hand or enter it into the Q&A. We would just need your full name and address. I see a hand up. Peggy Cherry, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If we could enable her to speak, please.
Yes. Also.
Thank you. All right, you should be able to unmute Ms. Cherry. And again, I hope I said that correctly. If you could just give us your full name and address for the record.
65 High Street, Peggy Cherry. And if you could go back to the plan here in the purple, what was the original one? I thought there was going to be some drainage, something along High Street or close to High Street. And now, from what I can read on this map, it's down in the right at the left there as you enter the property, which is the wetlands, correct?
The purple area here, is that what you're
Yes.
referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, did she say that it's being enlarged, or what was the change on that?
Angela, if you wouldn't mind just
Yep.
speaking to that.
So this was the original size of that infiltration trench. This is the previous plan that was before the board. And then this here is the new size. Both of them are being sent to the ultimate outfall, which is this basin in the center here. So it's not draining towards the wetlands. It's going.
Oh, so it's kind of going uphill?
Yep, it's all connected, our drainage here.
Okay. So do you see any effect to my property from water or anything? Added
Nope.
water?
Nope, so we're reducing our rates per the state stormwater guidelines. So
Okay.
Just to clarify, you're taking more water away, right? You've increased your capacity to collect stormwater more, correct?
yes,
Okay.
Okay.
So in theory, it should actually be a benefit that less water than there is today will be going towards Ms. Cherry's property, if all is working as it should.
Yep.
If I could just remind the board that from a Concom perspective, this actually, I believe it was Concom, went through 2 peer reviews. And the revisions that you're seeing were as a result of the peer review. So the town's consultant basically has, I'll use the word, requested the revisions that you see on here and has reviewed it to make sure that it satisfied all requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did that take care of your questions, Ms. Cherry?
Well, you know, honestly, it's I hope so. I mean, I hope so. Okay, like, you know, a lot of other areas in Westwood, we have water, you know, and you know, the blasting in the water is the issue for us living here. And,
understandable.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
typically the idea of these catch basins is, and we have seen this with some of the designs on other applications, that there's insufficient drainage today, and that what they're designing, even though they're adding impermeable surface, the offset, as Mr. Zaka referred to, particularly when the peer reviewers made the recommendations, it should collect everything and more is kind of the idea, what they're going for. So the hope is that you'll see an improvement from what you have today, even though there are going to be 5 houses up behind there. But they're required to offset what they create and then some.
I hope so.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just if you are interested in attending the Conservation Commission meeting tomorrow night, they'll go into further depth of the stormwater management. Their meeting is tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Are you talking to me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Peggy.
yes, I will be there.
Okay. All right. Great. I'm just putting the link in the chat just for reference.
Thank you. That's helpful. There may be other folks, you know, listening or watching that are interested in that part of this discussion as well. So thank you on this particular project. All right. I didn't see any other hands raised, nor do I see anything in the Q&A. So with that, unless there's any further discussion from the board members, I'm happy to entertain a motion. I think we have a couple on this one.
I move that the planning board determine the modification of the shared driveway special permit approval for 101 High Street, 101 High Street, excuse me, is described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on May 21st, 2025, to be minor in nature.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion carries. Now we have a slightly longer motion.
I'll do it this time. I'm tapping others in going forward. I move that the planning board grant the minor modification of the shared driveway permit approval for 101 High Street as described in the application, therefore submitted to the planning board and filed in the office of the town clerk on May 21st, 2025, subject to the following conditions. 1, except as modified by the conditions and finding hereof, the project shall comply with the project plans and with the conditions of all prior decisions for the property in all respects, and the applicant shall pursue completion of the project with reasonable diligence and continuity. 2, if the project or any condition imposed in this decision requires any other permit, license, or other approval from any town of Westwood board, commission, or agency, or other commonwealth or federal regulatory agency, the applicant shall make an appropriate application for the same and shall obtain all required approvals prior to the start of any work. If any condition of such permit, license, or other approval from any other board, committee, or agency is inconsistent with this decision, the applicant shall make application to the planning board for an amendment of this decision, and the planning board shall consider such application in accordance with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9, and all applicable planning board rules and regulations. 3, any proposed alterations, modifications, deletions, or changes to the decision shall be requested in writing to the town planner and building commissioner prior to implementation. A, proposed alterations which are considered de minimis by the building commissioner may be accepted as a note to the file. B, proposed alterations which are considered minor by the building commissioner shall require the filing of a modification application of said approval for review by the planning board at a publicly posted planning board meeting. C, proposed alterations which are determined to be major by the building commissioner or by the planning board shall be considered by the planning board as a formal amendment to the approval and will require a new public hearing before the planning board. 4, prior to the start of construction, additional test pits shall be performed in the information submitted prior to the start of construction. The applicant's engineer shall also provide a statement regarding the information and if the test pit findings are consistent with the approved plan and to describe any deviation. Per 101 High Street, Westwood MA Stormwater Peer Review, comment letter number 2, submitted by Lisa Cho, PE, and Kenneth Staffier, PE, dated April 23rd, 2025, for review and approval by the town planner and conservation agent. If said test pits are deemed unnecessary by the Conservation Commission at their May 28th, 2025 meeting for this site, then this condition will be void. 5, all project-related construction activities shall comply with the timeframe set forth in the town's general bylaws, Chapter 292, for noise and construction, which allows such work Monday through Saturday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and Sunday between the hours of 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. 6, a copy of this decision and the project plan shall be kept on the project site at all times during construction.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just checking. Seeing none, I will take a roll call vote. Phil,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
18
So
left.
our next agenda item is liaison appointments, annual recommendations to select board for various subcommittee and committee liaison appointments. All right, Elijah, if you would like to maybe go over what appointments we need to make and what boards there are, et cetera, that would be great.
Yes, so the planning board has several different committees and that they are designated for or sent as representatives. I guess I can go through the list of what they are and then who's currently there. We have the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC. That's a regional planning agency that deals with the greater Boston area. And currently Steve Olenoff is our current representative and Phil Giordano is the alternative. Steve has done a good job in the past at representing the town. So I don't see an issue with those there. Currently, the housing partnership representative is Phil Giordano, and the alternate is Kathleen Nee. And the for this the housing partnership really deals with affordable housing issues, housing choice, and the ability to address some of those concerns in the town, and looking for creative ways to solve housing needs. So they're actually currently in the process of updating their housing production plan. Phil has done a great job at representing the board in that capacity, but there is an opening for an alternate for this position. The MBTA Advisory Board designee, this is related to transportation issues for public transit. Steve Olenoff is the current appointee and would like to remain. The next one is the Regional Transportation Advisory Council. This is actually going through a reorganization. So once I get some more information on how this group will further carry itself out, I would actually ask that the board hold back from any appointee until such a time. The next one is the Three Rivers Interlocal Council. This is kind of like a sub-regional meeting of MAPC. It's for those kind of along the Neponset area communities. So, ourselves, Norwood, Canton, I believe Milton is another community. And so these they meet monthly and are kind of discuss planning initiatives for different communities that are surrounding, as well as looking at regional opportunities for the communities to engage in. Sean is the current representative, and Alan Rawlings is the alternate. The next one is the Ped and Bike Safety Committee. Kathleen Nee was the representative for that, so this position will need to be filled. I would suggest for any of the newer members, if they're interested, this is a good place to kind of get active in seeing some, as your time permits, for getting active in looking at safety concerns as it relates to, pedestrian and bicycle access and things of that sort. They meet monthly as well. I believe it's the fourth Thursday of the month. And then the next position that is open is the Westwood Environmental Action Committee, WEAC, and they meet around. They're an advisory committee that meets around energy issues as well as sustainability issues. So if you're interested in things of that nature, I would suggest you, go for this position. The next one is the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. Ellen is the current representative. This group meets typically on a monthly basis, and they discuss, long-range financial planning issues as it relates to, looking at tax restructuring or potential projects that could be of consideration around the town as it relates to economic development. And the next group, the Canton Street Working Group, this is related to the Canton Street Sidewalk Project. Ellen is the current representative, would like to remain. And this group is meeting on an as-needed basis. Currently, they're waiting for some more design updates before meeting again. The next group is the Off-Leash Dog Park Working Group. Kathleen Nee was our representative, so this position will need to be filled. And that group meets initially was looking for a area to designate for a dog park for off-leash, dog recreation, and it's evolved a little bit since then, but that was the initial scope of that group. And so I would just suggest the board I can share.
Can we maybe go down the list of each of those?
Yeah, as to the ones that need to be filled.
Yeah.
Right.
So it sounds like MAPC is covered. We've got Stephen, Phil as the alternate.
Yep.
Housing Partnership. Phil, you want to stay there?
I want to stay. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I like staying on that.
That's cool. Yep.
No, you're doing great work there. But we need an alternate, it sounds like.
Yes.
I'm happy to be Phil's understudy on this one.
There we go.
Excellent.
Right.
All right.
So can I call you my Padawan?
I think we might make that a requirement, actually. MBTA Advisory Board, Steve is still got his couple years left in his term, I think, and he's doing good work there. So I'm good with that.
Regional
Regional.
transportation. Oh,
Sorry,
go
let
ahead.
me
Yeah.
just, I'm just.
Yeah, no,
stopping
no,
that.
that's sorry. We're getting ahead of the cursor. So while Elijah's typing, Phil, are you happy being the regional
Well,
transportation advisory?
that's the one restructuring, right?
Oh, right, right, right.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's the one
Yeah.
being held, we're holding off on.
Okay. We can come back to that at a later date.
Yep.
Trick. Sean, did you want to continue?
I'd like to make a recommendation there to this group. Trick is an interesting group, and it would welcome any of us board members to attend whenever we wanted to. They love having elected officials show up. The primary composition of Trick, there are, I believe, 13 or 14 communities that are members of the Three Rivers Interlocal Council. I think all but two, Westwood and Milton, all of those communities but two have either their town planner or the director of community and economic development appointed as their representative to Trick. Unless our members here see an issue with it, I'd actually want to propose or recommend having Elijah as our town planner be our representative to Trick, which I think will provide a good opportunity for engagement. It's also a good chance for planners to get together and kind of gossip and talk about how difficult their planning boards are. So I propose Elijah as perhaps the representative to Trick, and then keep one of us as an alternate, knowing very well that the folks at MAPC who run that are very welcoming and would love to have our participation and engagement from any of us in whatever way we would like to engage.
I actually think that's a great idea because I was the Trick rep the year before you, and definitely was like, you're right. It was us and someone from Milton were the only elected representatives, and everybody else had this context that I didn't necessarily have because they do this 24/7, and they were all kind of vibing with each other. And I was like, oh, I'll just sit over here and eat my muffin. And you're right, they're very welcoming, but I think your suggestion is an excellent one, unless board members object, but that was my experience.
Unless Elijah
as well.
objects, like
Yeah,
Elijah
unless
would be like, I
Elijah
don't want to
Yeah,
do
because you're
this.
dumping it on Elijah. Elijah, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Or
I can-
Nora.
Yeah.
I vote Nora because she's not here tonight.
I mean, no, is Nora okay with it? With Elijah doing that?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I would say, you can have me as you can have me as a representative, and then whoever the alternate is can be the representative if there's an issue.
Like plenty of towns send two people to the meetings regularly, so and we're fortunate because of Steve's role on MAPC. Steve's often at the meetings as well, and so we've got some good connectivity. So I'm hoping there's no issues with that.
I'm still here. This is Steve.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve. Steve, do you see any issues with this model?
Yeah, so over the years, it's varied, and whether it's like the MAPC representative or just somebody else or the town planner, and it seems just a little over time. It seems to have evolved to more town planners. So yeah, so there's a good thought, Sean, that maybe we should do the same. And because I was on that for many years. I was chair for a number of years, and then I was vice chair for many years until they mentioned to us we need to have elections every year and should be changing who we have. And so it has grown to that. So it's a good thing for everyone to attend, and especially when they have the legislative breakfast, things like that. Yeah, you really get to know what's going on. And so I would recommend that, yeah, if Elijah has the time but you really have to make sure you really attend regularly. And I encourage the alternate to attend, and I attend not, I would say, on and off according to what I see is on the agenda. So I recommend anyone who would want to do that, but I think the alternate definitely should stay involved.
So who'd like to be the alternate? My name's
I'm
up there right
I'm
now.
happy staying for the time being, knowing that I
Great.
have some personal commitments coming up that may or may not change that. But at that time, hopefully we can make a change out there if we need to. And again,
Yeah,
I think
the select board does appointments, like guys, every other meeting they're appointing people. So I don't think it would be a problem to, if we had to swap you out at some point.
and
but-
again, I think any of you would be welcome. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they appreciate the engagement.
Yeah, you can learn so much just by seeing what's going on in other towns and discussing issues that they have, which is similar to issues that Westwood has. And sometimes you find other towns are ahead of us in certain issues, and we're ahead of other towns on certain issues. But yes, you can learn quite a bit, and it really enhances what you can do on the planning board. So I recommend it to everybody, actually.
Thank you. I will say I was our rep when everyone was trying to craft MBTA zoning, and it was kind of edifying to see that we were actually ahead of most of the other communities. So they were all asking us questions about, oh, well, what are you doing for that? What are you doing for that? So it was definitely a good experience. I didn't mean to minimize it, but I did notice that it was myself, and at the time it was a gentleman from Milton, were the only two elected folks in the room. So I appreciate this. I think this is a good change. Good idea, Sean. All right. Head bike safety. Who would like that?
That's a biggie.
So as vice chair of the head bike, it's pedestrian and bicycle advisory committee. That's the old name. So you should bring that up to date, Elijah. So we definitely want someone, and it's important that we have someone that attends regularly because we need you for the quorum. I mean, for instance, the topic tonight that came up on that path, things like that, and traffic safety. It was interesting that we, in the last two meetings, were discussing the problem with parents dropping off and picking up kids at the school, and the way it backs out onto the street and causes traffic problems. And so we're working with the police department to resolve that. So there's a lot there. And so I appreciate one of the, again, one of the newer people maybe would be good for that.
I'm happy to join that committee, Steve.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I'm not trying to keep myself out of anything.
Oh, unless Maureen wants
Maureen,
to.
we've
However,
noticed you
this-
were very, very quiet the whole time.
I'm already on the Board of Health and the Canton Street Working Group. So I wanted to see how this kind of meshes, and then I'll gladly step in wherever.
I think that's reasonable. You've got other stuff.
You're
going
serving
on.
the town in many ways. This is
Yes.
Yeah, so. just let
And
me
these
see
are
how
all,
we-
these are volunteer.
Yeah.
There have been years where folks just haven't had the bandwidth to take on any of these additional liaisonships, and it's totally fine. No judgment, but thank you for.
I wasn't holding back, and the reason it went dark is because I was down to 10% on my battery for my laptop, so I had to
Come plug in.
Plug in.
No worries.
Maureen, I've
No
used that
worries.
many times when I'm trying to get out.
Yep. I'm just trying to leave.
All right. WEAC. Oh, right. So that one we definitely need a new person because Josh is not a member of the board anymore. Is anyone particularly interested in environmental action? I can tell you they're a great group. I was the liaison for a couple of years, and it is something I'm interested in. So it was really a nice liaisonship for anyone who's interested in sustainability, pollinator protection, all things environmental. I'm not trying to sell it too hard, but it's a nice group of people.
I would say, Maureen, it's not a hard commitment. If
I understand. Because I have been to one or two of them. But right now with this going on and then my other two, I just want to make sure I'm not overextending myself. And
Totally
commit to
understandable.
something that I have to definitively do.
Elijah, what's the WEAC meeting frequency?
I think
I
it's,
believe they meet the third.
I think it's like a Thursday.
Like
Yeah, I think the third Thursday of every month.
Oh, yeah, they seem to. Okay, and I think my sense was that Josh was able to make some of the meetings, but not all. So I think it's one that even if someone's a partial on it, it might not need our engagement at every meeting if it's challenging time-wise.
Yeah.
It's on Thursdays. That would probably conflict with me on housing, so that,
I
I
know,
don't know if I could do that.
on Wednesday. You
And
sure I don't have to go to every one? I won't be-
Definitely.
I won't be talked, I won't be
their
talked
chairs-
about.
Their chair is good about reaching out if there's something that they really think planning board should be involved in and updating after the fact if we just can't make it.
And
Yeah,
that's
I think,
Kathleen, isn't it Kathleen something?
It was Kate LaCroix. Is
Yeah.
she still the
Kate
chair?
LaCroix and Stephen Hart.
Oh, okay.
yeah, they're
They've-
great.
Great.
And maybe Elijah, we can just send them a note of understanding, like maybe let us know a little proactively when you need our engagement the most, just because we're stretched a little thin.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
So
Maureen just volunteered.
I
I heard her
Oh.
say it.
No, Bill just volunteered.
No. I already I got plenty.
all right, I'm gonna put Maureen down.
Can't the board of health count as that?
Yeah. Maureen, we won't hold you to too much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. It's okay.
Excellent.
And then the last one that we need a position to be filled
Dog
for
park.
sure is the dog park.
I
Who
mean,
would like to be
I
that?
was going to these anyway, so I might as well.
Excellent.
Go as an official representative.
Perfect. That was easy.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad.
All right, so I would just ask someone to take a motion to approve these appointments as proposed. Madam Chair, if you
Oh.
may.
Yes, I
So
would
moved.
happily entertain that motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Oh,
I was
second.
gonna say second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on these appointments? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Mike,
Aye.
Maureen,
I,
Sean,
Aye.
and Phil.
And I say aye.
I say aye as well. All right, so those will be recommended to the select board. They will vote and then we'll all get our notices that we have to go get sworn in by Dottie. Is that the procedure?
That's right.
Okay.
Dottie's
right.
been tired of seeing me.
She's gonna be busy.
Yeah.
All right, then our next agenda item is minutes from the 5/6/25 planning board meeting. So this one is the first time we've ever had to do this.
It's just you and me, Ellen.
Just you and me. Did you have any changes or suggestions, Phil?
No, I didn't see anything for changes. I thought they were fine.
And same. All right, then I would entertain a motion.
So I move to approve the minutes for the meeting of May 6, 2025 as presented.
I second that motion out of necessity. Elijah, procedural question. I know Sean was that. Do the other folks, do I have to ask them to vote and they all have to abstain because none of them were present at the meeting? But they're
They
here
weren't-
now.
They weren't members at the time.
Well, Sean,
they weren't
yes.
members.
Sean was.
Yeah, so Sean, I guess you
Okay.
can take a roll call vote, including Sean. And then
Including
would
Sean. Okay,
abstain.
this came up during long range financial planning and it was a little bit of a bugaboo on how to handle folks who had not been present. Okay, so I will take roll call. Phil,
Aye.
Sean,
Abstain.
and I vote aye as well. The motion carries. The minutes are approved as written. All right, next agenda item. Agency and committee updates. Updates from agency and committee representatives. Has anyone attended any other meetings of other organizations that they would like to update us on?
No, we had a housing meeting, went very well, working on the housing production plan. I mean, a lot of stuff going on, so, but nothing yet. I think that'll be TBD, to be done.
All right. I always look forward to the housing partnership updates, so I'm looking forward to hearing the deets when they're available.
Yes.
All right. Anyone else? Has anyone else been to anything? I have not.
I was at town meeting.
Yeah, I think we were all at town meeting, but
I wasn't there.
And it was done at 10:20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
remarkably, honestly, I know I was settled in for a much longer night. I was about ready to have a second cupcake and then realized I didn't have to. So it was anything else? Anyone else have any other agency or committee reports? No, I didn't think so. All right. Miscellaneous updates, general miscellaneous updates and administrative items. Elijah, anything?
I would just reiterate that the housing production plan is underway, and anyone interested can literally search the words housing production plan on the town website, and it should direct you to the page with more information.
Excellent. All right, then our last agenda item are our upcoming meetings. We have board meetings on June 17th, 2025, July 8th, 2025, July 29th, 2025. And just refresh my memory, when do we need to think about the schedule for the rest of the year now that we have new members and whatnot?
Yes, so I want to say it's usually by the July meeting that we make that decision.
Right. All right, but we're good for the foreseeable future. We don't need to take any action anytime.
I have one announcement.
Oh, hey, Steve. Yes.
Right. Yeah, MAPC is having their annual council meeting on June 4th, 9:30 a.m. to 12 in the it's really Braintree Town Hall in Braintree. And I might add, the executive director, Mark Drayson, is retiring. And so this will be his last meeting, but as I mentioned before, that's what's happening at MAPC right now. Last executive committee meeting is, what to do about hiring a replacement. So that's the big issue at MAPC right now. But that meeting's coming up, and anyone is welcome to attend. I think the keynote speaker is the Consul General of Canada, Bernadette Jordan, and then we have panel. Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll will be on the panel, and Michelle Wu, Mayor of Boston, will be on the panel. So I think it'll be a good meeting to go to.
Thank you. Thanks. Excellent. So put that on your calendar if you have the availability. It does sound like it would be worth attending. All right. Well, that is the end of our agenda. So thank you, Sean. In the chat, there's a link if anyone's looking for it. If nobody else has any additional items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And Kate's not here to make her favorite motion of the night.
Exactly.
It's
I'll
gonna
take
be
it for tonight. I
All
move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second and a third. Any discussion on adjournment? Seeing none, I'll take roll call. Mike.
Aye.
You had to think about that.
I wanted to mention that I will read next time, Sean. I felt bad.
No, it's okay. I kind of enjoy it, but well.
You sound like an auctioneer.
I know
Gotta move fast.
he's got it down. I cannot read the motions unless I absolutely have to, so I'm off the hook on those. So I appreciate other people willing to step up.
Yeah, I'll help Sean.
All right. I heard an aye from Mike.
Yes.
Sean.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Phil.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. We are adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Folks,
Take
thank
care.
you.